Hello, everybody. I wanted to wish you a great day. Today is May 29th. That's 529 day. That's the day we're recording this. So let's get down to basics. Let's talk about the benefits of 529 plans, and let's do it very quickly. We're going to do this in under 15 minutes. So I have with me one of our great partners, Ryan White from Columbia Threadneedle Investments. Columbia is the team that runs our South Carolina Future Scholars Plan. So I'm not a big fan of doing other people's intros beyond that. So Ryan, if you just give us a brief intro and then we'll jump right in.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'd start out by saying I'm both an advocate for 529 and a user, right? I have young kids, a 6 and a 3-year-old, so I'm a perfect candidate for a 529, and I've spent 12 years with Columbia Threadneedle working on 529 plans the whole time. So, graduate of UNC, native of North Carolina, and thank you for having me very much today.
Excellent. All right, we're gonna move fast to keep this bite-sized, 15 minutes or less. So there's going to be certainly more information that's going to be available if you need it. So certainly reach out to me and let me know. One important note, and you hear this from me all the time. So the information here today is not in itself advice. It is opinion. It is our opinion and information. And the tax information we talk about specifically is not to be taken as tax advice. As always, we're going to work with your tax advisors to see how this and any other planning ideas are going to affect your financial plan. So let's jump right in. All right, Ryan. So let's start with the easy stuff. What exactly is a 529 plan?
Yeah, so 529 programs are, first of all, very creatively named for their section of the tax code. We tend to like to do that in financial services, but first and foremost, they are the only account type that was ever created for the express purpose of paying for higher education. And they've actually been expanded more recently to cover a much wider range of education topics or education pursuits, and even an opportunity to fund retirement accounts. So they're tax advantaged ways to plan for a long-term goal for most families.
Awesome. So tell me, who can actually open a 529 plan and who can they open it for?
Yeah, so a 529 can be opened for, usually you find someone opening it for a child. So more often than not, it's going to be a parent opening it up for one of their kids, or a grandparent opening it up for a grandkid. Technically, anyone can open a 529 for anybody else, but usually it's going to be a student that you're potentially saving for, saving and investing for the cost of their future education.
All right. So although I did talk about the fact that it's not going to be tax advice, can you tell me a little bit about the tax advantages of the 529 plans?
Right. So the reason why 529 plans are so special is they provide an opportunity for tax deferred growth. So when I make a contribution to a 529, I get to invest that money in a way that is not subject to annual taxation. And of course, taxation is one of our biggest impediments to growing our wealth over time. 529s provide a solution for that. And then on the back end, when it comes time to actually use the money, if I use it for a qualified expense, which in terms of education is a wide variety of different types of expenses, then I get to take that tax-free growth I got and then use it tax-free to pay for that education.
All right, so that's awesome. Now here's the idea. What can actually the funds be used for when you take them out?
Yeah, so when these programs were originally brought to market in the late 90s, they were exclusively for college use. And so what you see sort of at the forefront of 529s is tax-free use for higher education. So that, of course, includes things like tuition and fees at colleges and universities, but it also includes other things. And when you look at the components of college costs, tuition and fees make up only about half of that sticker price. The other half is things like room and board, books, supplies, required equipment. All of that can be used out of a 529 plan completely tax-free. And we're also talking about education in-state or out-of-state, public or private, 2-year, 4-year, a wide variety of specific vocational schools, as well as close to 400 international institutions. And then more recently, actually beginning in 2017, these programs, which again were used to be exclusively for college use, were expanded to now include K through 12 tuition up to $10,000 a year, registered and certified apprenticeship programs, and all the expenses associated with those, as well as even student loan repayment. So you even have the ability to take on a little bit of debt, maybe a motivator for a student, make sure they get to class on time, and actually repay that out of the 529. And here we are. It's May in 2025, and we have some pending potential legislation that may even open up 529s for additional uses, things like certification programs. So it could be that these programs are going to be getting even wider in scope over the next few months.
Yeah, we never know what's going to come out of Washington at this point in time, right? So what happens now? This is the big question I always get: is what happens if the child doesn't go to college? If the beneficiary that we're setting up, what happens if they don't go to college? What happens to the money?
Yep, and I would say that in my decade plus, that's the question, right? Everybody wants to know. I'm doing what I can, right? But no one has a crystal ball. And so the good thing about 529s is that the owner of the account has a lot of flexibility and control. So the first option, of course, is I don't have to do anything. 529s are actually quite beneficial for things that they don't include, specifically time limits, income limits, or required minimum distribution. So I'm never actually required to take money out of my 529 account. So I can simply wait. Let's not forget I'm getting tax deferred growth of my investment. The second option, of course, is I can just simply swap the student, right? I open an account for my son. He goes down one path that doesn't require me to use it for his education. I simply change the beneficiary to my daughter. I can change the beneficiary on a 529 account to any member of the family, which includes basically anyone in my household, any lineal descendants, so parents, grandparents, etc., first cousins, aunts, uncles. It's a pretty wide umbrella, and I can actually change that student beneficiary as often as I need to without any tax cost, penalty, or fee, as long as I meet that member of the family criteria. More recently, and one of the more exciting features we have for 529s is this now opportunity to roll money to a Roth IRA. So if I have a long-standing 529 account, this now provides me with an additional opportunity to take money out tax-free if I didn't need it for education. So whether I have leftover funds or I saved over the course of my student's life and didn't wind up needing it for education, it's just an additional opportunity for tax-free distribution. And let's not forget that as the account owner, I have the option, but no obligation to use the money for education. And what I mean by that is if my air conditioner breaks, or I need to buy a car, or something happens to my job and I need the money because my income's gone away, I can always use my 529 account for a non-qualified distribution and simply pay tax and penalty on the earnings portion. So again, that flexibility and control in that situation of maybe I'll need it, maybe I don't, is one of the biggest benefits of a 529 account.
All right, I'll do a shameless plug real quick, is that if you note, I do have a special video on that Roth option. So if you want to go and check that out or ask me, I'll send you a copy. I'll send you a link to that video. All right, so that's number one question. I think probably a very close number two question that I always get is that what do 529 plans do in the financial plan and the financial aid world? What effect does it have for financial aid?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I would start by saying that there's really only two types of financial aid when you really think about it. There's the kind that everybody wants, which is the free kind, right? The scholarship kind we typically think about. And then there's the other kind. And the other kind is needs-based aid, right? So this is an application process. It uses a FAFSA form, free application for federal student aid in most cases. And this is a formulaic process. And it basically asks parents, how much money do you make? How much money do you have? It'll ask similar questions about the student in question. It'll do a math problem and figure out, here's how much money we, the institution, need to come up with to help you fund the education here. The reality of that is that a lot of that money is going to come in the form of student loans, but college is expensive, so you might still need it. So then to your question, how does a 529 impact that? Well, the nice thing about a 529 is even though I'm getting tax-free growth of my investment, tax-free distributions for education, and my student is literally named on the account, the financial aid process doesn't consider my 529 account any more than it considers my checking account. So there's no penalty for owning a 529, even though you're getting a lot of benefits for education, but it does factor into the equation. One thing to note, however, though, is that it doesn't include accounts owned by grandparents. So grandparents are actually in a really good position to be able to fund a 529 for a grandchild, maintain access to that money, and also not have to worry about any impacts on financial aid calculations.
All right. So then we've got all the ideas of the what and the why and the how. How much should people could be contributing to this, and when should they really start?
Well, I'm firmly in the camp of it is almost impossible to overfund your 529 account. The national average cost for a 4-year institution over 4 years is about $120,000. A lot of uh, a lot of students pursue education beyond their bachelor's degree in the form of graduate school, which again, on average for a 2-year program runs about $60,000. So now you're talking about, close to $180,000 price tag, and that's for public school in today's dollars. So I would challenge anyone in overfunding their account. And for the time element, time in the market is as important as anything. Invest early, invest often, as they say. And one of the things to keep in mind about saving for education is from the minute that student is born, you have about 18 years. I always like to remind folks that 2/3 of the students that graduate this month in May from high school are going to be enrolled in higher education in the immediately following upcoming fall semester. So what that means is, you've got that student at home, even if they're, an infant, right? That 18-year clock has started. Um, everybody's situation is a little bit different, but in terms of how much to contribute, my advice to folks is get online. There's a ton of calculators. We have them at Columbia Threadneedle. Different 529 plans all over the country will have college cost calculators where you can put in the age of your student. You can put in whether or not you want to make a lump sum contribution, a monthly contribution. You can identify the type of school that you want to save for, and it'll do that math for you to figure out, hey, if you want to fund 100% of the cost, this is what you should consider contributing. If you want to maybe hit 50%. As a benchmark, what I would tell folks is if you look at how college costs get paid, about 50% of college costs are paid by the household. So if you simply use that as a target to say, hey, if I think college is going to cost $200,000 by the time my student is 18, 50% of that being $100,000, maybe that's what I shoot for. So those are a couple of considerations that I would give for folks that are trying to figure out how much to contribute. And, the earlier you can get started, the better.
Amazing. Okay, so I think that we've hit a lot of the plain vanilla stuff. Let me ask you about a couple of strategies for larger financial planning ideas. And what I mean by that is maybe grandparents or parents, for that matter, with estate planning ideas, and then this 5-year front load idea.
Yeah. So one of the biggest, I would say, misunderstandings or things that people just don't know about 529s is there's a few things happening with a 529 account that are really not found anywhere else in the tax code. 529s get very unique treatment in that the contributions you make are still under your control as the account owner, but they're actually considered completed gifts to the student beneficiary. So even though you can change the beneficiary, even though you could open it up an account today and close it tomorrow, for gift and estate purposes, they're considered a completed gift. And this is unique to 529s. You don't find this treatment anywhere else. So what that means is I have the ability from an estate and legacy perspective to position money, outside of my estate, not subject to probate. It's considered gifted, but I still have access to it. That in combination with the fact that 529 contributions use our annual gifting exclusion, I'm allowed to fund a 529 up to the amount of that annual gifting exclusion without any gift tax. And 529s have a unique feature that actually allow me to accelerate that by 5 years worth of gifts. So to sum it up in one sentence, if I'm a married couple and filing a joint return, I can use 5 years worth of my gifting potential in a single transaction to fund a 529. And of course, the ability to lump fund something like a tax deferred investment account can be very beneficial over the long term. So in today's limits, that's up to $190,000 in a single transaction or a single contribution, where I, as the contributor, wouldn't owe any gift tax, and I could unwind the whole thing tomorrow. So it really is a situation of being able to have your cake and eat it too, from a contributor's perspective.
Amazing. All right. So we're running up against time. So here's the quick question. What action steps should someone take right now? It's 529 day. No better time to do it now. Should we check out our individual state plan? Should we just go ahead and open the account? Should we set up, annual or monthly contributions? If you had one idea, say, okay, give me one action plan. What's the idea today?
Yeah, the one action plan is get that account open, and the best time to open a 529 account was yesterday. I mean, the ability to grow your investment in a tax advantaged way, and reap all the benefits of the 529 really starts with simply opening the account. It is important to check out the tax treatment in the state in which you live. For example, in South Carolina, if you contribute to the South Carolina 529 plan, you get an unlimited state income tax deduction based on those contributions. That's not necessarily the case in a place like Texas where there's no state income tax. So you can choose any 529 plan you want and still get the same benefit. So, do a little bit of homework, but quite frankly, just get that account open and get that investment started.
Amazing. Okay, Ryan, thank you so much. I'm going to add on to the action plan idea that if you're thinking about this, again, it's May 29th. So let's think about it even more today. Give me a call, shoot me an email. Let's talk about this. Let's get the ball rolling. And we appreciate your time today. And I hope you have a great rest of your May 29th.